Good afternoon and welcome to our live question and answer session. We're from Take Your Place, an impartial organisation dedicated to giving you the information you need, regardless of where you're applying to study. We're made up of higher education champions from 5 universities and 9 further education colleges from across the east of England. My name is Lucy and I'm here with my colleagues Nancy, Amy, Brian and Jodie. We're delighted to be with you today to answer any questions you have about the application process. Just to explain the software we're using, you do not have access to your microphones and camera, and this just helps our technology to run smoothly. If you do have any questions, down in the right-hand side you'll see a bubble. This is our chat section. Please do type in any questions you have as we go along, and we'll do our best to answer them, or we will direct you to the best place to find out more information. We'll also be recording the session and we'll be happy to send you a copy. To have an understanding of where you are in the application process, we have some quick questions for you. It would be great if you could join in and let us know if you agree or disagree with the following questions. You can do this by clicking on the icon at the bottom middle of your screen, which has a green tick on it. I'm interested in going to university. I understand the UCAS timeline and know the process of application. I've begun thinking about what course I'd like to study. I know where I might like to study. I understand potential supercurricular activity for my subject. I've started supercurricular activity. And I'm confident in writing a personal statement. That's brilliant, thank you very much. So we can see that some of you might be at different stages about the application. Some of you might have already begun writing personal statements and are feeling really confident, so you might have questions in this area. Some of you might just be starting. Please don't worry, and do remember to check out on our website our podcasts for our previous episodes, and if you're starting to think about that personal statement, do look out for our next personal statement talk, which will be by Amy, and it will be coming up very shortly. When working in schools and colleges, we often ask lots of questions about applying to university. No question is ever silly. Often it's those type of questions which lots of students want to know the answer to, but just don't feel they can ask. We thought about questions around the process of applying to university, and you can see on the slides here the areas we often get asked questions about. We'd love to be able to answer your questions, so do post these in the chat box. While you're thinking about possible questions, we do have some questions that have been sent in to our program's email address, appsunlocked@takeyourplace.ac.uk. We also have answers to frequently asked questions to share with you. We're lucky enough to have Jodie, our arts specialist, with us today. Jodie is manning the chat and can also answer arts-related questions, so please do feel free to ask any. I'm now going to hand over to Brian for our first question.
Hi everyone, this is Brian from the Cambridge team, part of Take Your Place. So thank you all for coming along to join our webinar. Now the question is, if I'm not applying for early entry, can I still send off my application before October? And I like this question because it shows that people are keen, that people are trying to get ahead a little bit and maybe minimize the stress. I do see a lot of students that sometimes are applying sort of last thing in January, and that can be quite stressful for everyone involved. The good news is, yes, you can apply before October, whether you're applying for early entry or not. So the way it works with UCAS is that each year you can start putting your application together in roughly May, towards the end of May. They kind of open it up for the next year's entry. But they won't let you submit an application till early in September. So this year, 2020, you'll be able to send your application off to universities from the 8th of September. So this can be good, as I said. It can minimise that stress. It may put you towards the top of the list to be for the one of the first applications that's seen. Especially if you're applying for particularly popular courses. And universities are quite often keen for, especially if they're interviewing or they're looking for things like portfolios, it means they can start doing that work with you, start getting to know you a little bit better, a little bit earlier, perhaps even before Christmas. But that can be a little bit of a double-edged sword. If you're applying for an arts course, for instance, or something that requires an interview, so a course such as nursing, as an example, you may be called in to interview or to provide that portfolio earlier than other students because they want to see you. They think, right, you've sent your application off, you're ready. If you're not ready, it may be worth just holding back your application a little bit until you're comfortable with kind of the next steps. It's also not worth rushing it to try and get ahead if that means that you're harming the quality of your personal statement. It's better to take your time and try to get your statement off in the best possible shape that you can, rather than just trying to rush to the head of the queue. So it's up to you to kind of balance that. I don't recommend sending it off last thing in January, but just making sure, first of all, that you have the best possible statement that you can. But you can, if you're really keen, apply from the beginning of September. Thank you.
So the next question, how can I make a change to my UCAS application once it has been sent off? So that depends on the type of change you want to make. So for example, things like your address, your phone number, your email address, these can be changed fairly easily on track under your personal details. Alternatively, you can also call UCAS if you would like them to make the changes. They'll let your universities and colleges know, but it's best to let them know yourself as soon as possible, just so you've got that in as well. Also, make sure you get your post redirected as well. Things like swapping your course at university, you'll actually need to get in touch with the university rather than UCAS. So if the university then agree to change the course, they'll then let UCAS know about that change. And then finally, if you'd like to swap your college or university choice, you can swap this within 14 days of the date of your welcome email from the university. You can only swap one choice once, and then you can make this swap in track. However, you can't swap as easily if you're making this choice at the end of June. So if you swap after that deadline for a new uni choice, it will be considered as late. So make sure you contact that chosen university, the one that you want to change to, and check that they'll actually consider your application before you make that change.
This is a question we often receive from students about how soon they'll hear back from universities. It's a great question to ask, and unfortunately the answer is there's no exact rule about how long this is going to take. If you have a look on the UCAS website, UCAS say that every higher education institution can make decisions at different times, so it's really up to that individual university. We do know that lots of students often apply in January, perhaps just before the deadline. So the time before the deadline you apply could impact on how soon you hear, and that would really just depend how many other students are also applying at the same time. So universities are receiving a lot of applications. However, there are deadlines that universities need to respond to you, and this is usually in May if you apply before the January deadline, looking back at that UCAS timeline that Nancy discussed in her podcast. And above all, do keep an eye on UCAS track, as this is the first place that you're going to hear back. I'm going to hand you straight back to Nancy again.
So another question that we do get quite often is considering that they're going away. So for example, I'm going away during my application period and worried about missing dates to get back to universities. What should I do? So if you have got that holiday booked, or you know that you're going away at any time during the application period, you may want to nominate someone who can make decisions on your behalf, who can speak back and forth to you and discuss the application with UCAS. and the universities that you're applying to. So for example, this could be someone like a parent, a different relative, or a guardian, for example, someone you trust to be able to speak to UCAS or unis on your behalf. You can do this by having a nominated access. This is done whilst you're filling out your UCAS application. It will give you the option to do that. So just fill their details in, and then they'll be able to speak to them whilst you're on holiday or away at all.
So another question that we get asked quite a lot is, should we use paragraphs in our personal statements? And the answer is yes. Yes, you should. I think this question comes perhaps from the fact that UCAS in their statement will limit the amount of lines that you can use, and people think, you know, if I'm going to use paragraphs, I'm going to be losing lines. If you don't lose paragraphs, though, you will lose the quality of your writing and the kind of the coherence, the kind of argument that you're making will be kind of muddied by everything being in one big, hard to read block of text. So yes, you do want to break your personal statement down into paragraphs. You don't need to have loads of paragraphs, 3, 4, maybe 5, depending on how you structure things, will be fine. And if you're worried about taking up all that space and taking up those lines, you only need to press enter once. You don't need to sort of double space your paragraphs to leave a big gap, because when the statement is sent off to universities, they will it will sort of sort out the formatting for them on your behalf. So you don't need to sort of enter these extra larger gaps. You just need to press enter once. So yeah, that's how you should make sure that each kind of paragraph is talking about sort of one thing, one area. So you might start with, say, your introduction, move on to talking about your supercurricular, your extracurricular, and then the other things that you have done around that. But that's something we'll be covering in more detail soon.
Around how much of my personal statement should include extracurricular activity is a question. Oh, I think Brian is back, ready to answer this question, which is perfect. I'm going to hand straight over to you, Brian.
Sorry about that. I lost my my audio for a second there. Yes. So apologies for that. So yes, how much of my personal statement should include extracurricular activity? First of all, just something to be careful of. When you talk about extracurricular activity, a lot of people will get that confused with supercurricular activity. So it's good just to make sure that you're aware of the difference between the two. So supercurricular activity is things that you have done, extra things you have read or researched, or skills you've tried that enhance your subject knowledge and enhance your curriculum knowledge. They're not things you're doing in class, but they are things that link directly to your chosen subjects, and hopefully when you're coming to write your statement, to the things you're looking to study. Extracurricular activity is the things that you've done outside the classroom that maybe don't have quite such a link to what you're going to be studying. So for example, if you are looking to apply for history and you've been reading a whole load of books on a particular favoured time period that you're interested in, that would be supercurricular. But if you have got yourself a part-time job at your local supermarket, that would be extracurricular. So you've got your supercurricular and your extracurricular. And extracurricular activities can say a lot about you. They can say a lot about your drive, about your skills, and about your interest. That universities will find interesting, but they won't find it as interesting as the things that you've done that link directly to your subject. So going back a little bit to your talking about paragraphs, just make sure that you're including the most relevant things towards the top, and then you probably don't want any more than, say, 20% of your statement to be about extracurricular activity. You don't want to just have a big list of things that you have done, and I have done this, and I have done that, and I have done this, and I have done that. That will not be easy to read or super appealing to a university. Instead, try and pick the ones that maybe have skills that relate to being a student, or show you off in the best light, or maybe are the most sort of interesting different things that you have done, and try to say a little bit more about them. So what did you do? What did you achieve? What did you learn from it, rather than just a big list? But yes, you'd be looking for maybe nothing more than, say, 20% of your statement. Thank you.
Our next question is one that's often asked, I think, by students such as yourselves, really trying to decide between different subjects. So a question we often have is, what do I do if I want to apply for 2 different subjects? And the answer might surprise you, in that all of your 5 choices don't have to be for the same course. If you're thinking about applying to 2 similar courses, that's absolutely fine. Just make sure that you mention both of those courses in your personal statement, so that the university admissions team will know that you want to study that subject. If one of your course choices is really different, it is worth contacting the particular university that you're interested in applying to for that course, as they might accept a personal statement written just for that course choice. If you wanted to look a little bit further into this, do feel free to send us an email or have a look on the UCAS website. They have some great advice there. It is worth mentioning that if you're applying for medicine, you can make a maximum of 4 medicine course choices out of your 5 choices. UCAS suggests contacting universities directly if you want to apply to them for that 5th choice in a non-medicine course, to think about whether you could write a different personal statement just for that course. Of course, you don't have to use all of your choices if you're applying for medicine. You might just choose to apply for those 4 medicine courses only, and that's completely fine, and a choice that you're obviously very free to make. I'm now going to hand you over to Amy for our next question.
Thank you, Lucy. So the next question we have is, what types of response could I get from a university? So either a conditional or an unconditional offer is good news. A conditional offer means that you still need to meet the requirements, which will usually be exam results, which means waiting until results day in August to find out if you have met the conditions. An unconditional offer means you've got a place. Do check the offer carefully though, because you may have met the academic requirements, but sometimes some courses will have some other things that you need, for example, a DBS. Also remember, by accepting an unconditional offer, you are committing to going to that university, so you can't make an insurance choice. An unsuccessful or withdrawn choice removes that option, but you could add more. A withdrawn application means a course choice has been withdrawn by either you or the university or college. The reason will show up on track. Maybe you didn't respond to emails or letters that they've sent, or missed an interview. An unsuccessful application means they've decided not to offer you a place on the course. Sometimes they'll give a reason, either with their decision or at a later date. If not, you can contact them to ask if they'll discuss the reason with you. And the next question is, how do I let universities know I want to accept their offer? So once you've received a decision from all your universities, you have to respond by a deadline UCAS track will give you. This will depend on the date that you received all of your decisions by. You have to respond to all universities at once. You do this through track. You can accept a firm and an insurance offer. The firm offer is a university that you would most like to attend, as long as you meet their requirements. And the insurance offer is a backup option. It will usually be one asking for lower grades, so that you have another option should your studies not go as well as you had hoped. You contact universities through UCAS track. No email or follow-up needed unless you've got questions to ask. And the final question that we have is, can I apply for other post-18 options at the same time? Yes, if you're uncertain, you should definitely apply for other options too. Other options can include higher and degree apprenticeships or employment. Do your research though to find out what options are out there and what will be best suited to you.
Okay, so you've had a chance to hear some of our frequently asked questions, so please do feel free to ask us any questions using the chat box. I can't see any questions in there at the moment, but until we finish, please do feel free to drop any in and Jodie will be able to pass those straight on. We have put our email address in there, which is appsunlocked@takeyourplace.ac.uk. So if you leave this webinar and suddenly think of a question, do feel free to email us and we'll be able to get back to you. If you want to hear more answers to frequently asked questions, or you have a question of your own, we are also holding another live Q&A session on the 16th of July. Thank you so much for attending. We hope we've given you some insight into applying to university. Please do join us next week for Lucy and Andy's podcast about writing about skills in your personal statement. Do feel free to contact us on any of the ways that I've mentioned, and we wish you the best of luck. Thank you very much for joining us.